So, Virginie, you were in a panel on the first day looking at the settlement market and the trends towards harmonisation. First off, what were the key topics that came out of that, and what were maybe the big argument points?
Sure. Initially, I guess the discussion topic was the fact that the Giovannini Report came out 2001, and we still haven't really progressed that far with regards to settlements and shortening the settlement cycle. So a lot of the discussion was around some of the infrastructure changes that are going on, so Target 2 for securities, and how that's happening and how the ECB is driving that process, and how new regulations such as the CSD regulation is coming in to try and force change where market practices didn't work, so we've got to do something else.
So what were the big sort of arguments, what were people disagreeing on?
There wasn't too much disagreement. I think,
That's rare.
to be perfectly honest, everybody knows that there's a problem there. It'll change the dynamics within sort of competitive environments. So CSDs and custodians may be competing on areas that they probably didn't compete as much before. By divorcing, because T2S divorces settlement from the asset servicing, I guess, chain of processing there. It means that CSDs have to look to other revenue streams to be able to claw back some of the revenue they lose by going to pan-European settlements. So it's a bit of a tense time for the CSDs, and CSDR, or the regulation as it is kind of restricting them in a certain way. So it's a tough sort of rock and a hard place for them to some extent.
Going to be you were talking about the regulations. Is that causing? Is it the fact they've not fully arrived, or is it the fact that they are simply making things more difficult?
Well, if you look at the regulation, it doesn't come into force until 2015. So at the moment, it's a fairly long way off, and it's not top of mind for anybody that's not a big global custodian or a CSD. So, for example, I've been doing an outreach. I'm doing a research project on T+2 settlement. I've been talking to some buy-side firms, and they don't really understand what T+2 means for them at the moment because they haven't thought about it. So trying to raise the issue is quite difficult. I think there's an education process that needs to happen ahead of time, and that's part of where we are at the moment. There's so many other things to distract people. There's EMIR, there's MIFIR, and God knows, there's other moving parts that are happening. So
and even those are delayed enough, which
Sure.
could then have a knock-on effect of delaying things further.
Sure, and T2S was initially supposed to happen next year, and it's been delayed till 2015 also, so God knows if that will happen in the scope of the time frame that we have at the moment.
So do you think the feeling from industry is that they're going in the right direction with the regulations, or that they're actually becoming too complicated, they're not really going the way they expected or want them to?
In the settlement area, I think it's fairly simple, actually, the regulation. It doesn't go into too much detail at the moment. CSDR's first draft. So given that there's going to be a process of feedback, consultation periods and various iterations, we're so early in the time frame for production of the actual regulation itself, it's hard to tell at the moment. But there's things, references to settlement fines being harmonised across Europe, for example, and no one knows what they're going to be set at yet. So it's early days, but it's certainly interesting from my perspective.
Absolutely. So what do you think? You mentioned education. What should people be doing at this point right now to make sure that they are ready for that 2015 deadline?
I think just awareness and feeding back to the regulator. I mean, if your business is being materially affected or impacted by the regulation, you need to take notice of it. CSDs are trying to prepare for it. They're actively engaging with the regulatory community. Other players maybe not so much. So those guys do need to go and speak to ESMA, for example, and maybe go to Brussels and understand what the process is and how they can better engage with the regulatory community.
And let's hope they do, and it all works out happy for all, or as many as can be.
Fingers crossed.
Thank you very much for taking the time. It's a real pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks.
Cheers.